Welcome back, everybody. It's time to look for new positions and track some more transactions, so let's get right to it.
All right, here we are logged into the website MyATMM.com. We're setting on the dashboard, and today I want to go over the new performance tab that we have in the application. So you just click on Performance tab, and it currently goes to the current year and displays the current year's data, which obviously we're in January, so it's only showing 1 month. I'm going to go back to last year so we can see more data. And there we have it. We have the last 12 or the 12 months of that year, 2025. And I just want to just go over every single field on here so you can get familiar with this page and what it's capable of. So obviously this first field here is the drop down for the years, and you can go back at it tracks, whatever years I've been trading this or keeping track of it in this application, which as you can see, I've been doing it for 4 of the years here. And we also have the all-time one, which I'll go into after I've covered all of the fields. Next drop down is the month one. By default, it does all months for the year, but you can look at a specific month, and then that'll actually break it down by the day. So let me just show you that briefly. Because the fields at the top don't really change, it's just aggregating for different periods of time. So as you can see for 2025 for December, the day here is the actual day that it happened on. So you'll notice every trading day, on the weekends, you won't have a day there because there's probably not going to be any data there unless if you tracked some data on a weekend day and put it on that day. That's the only way that it would show up in here on a weekend day. But anyway, so you can see it broken down by each day how you did on that specific day. All right, let's switch it back to all months. The next field is you have the total options premium. So this is all of the premiums that you've collected for this period of time that you have selected. It shows the total, and then also the total dividends, and also the overall, which is, you'll notice that 28 plus 1 should be 29, but the total overall is showing less than that. The reason why it's showing less than that is because it's deducting withdrawals. It's actually counting for your deposits, your withdrawals, and not the realized gains or losses. That's what this toggle is for. So by default, it doesn't include the realized gains and losses. So it'll just give you the aggregate of all of these columns here in the total overall. The average monthly performance is just that. On average, you're bringing in 3.43%, and then that annualizes the 41% for the year. Now, keep an eye on these percentages over here. They're going to change because if I include the realized gains and losses, see how it adjusts things. Because the reason why I do that is because if you're constantly playing or selling cash cured puts and covered calls on a particular ticker symbol, um, depending on where you're selling the strikes, if you're like selling covered calls below your cost basis, then the chances are much higher for you to actually realize a loss, because if you get called out on that and you get stuck in the position, then you have to sell for less than you actually own the stock for. So you would end up with a realized loss. But if you continue playing on that same ticker, well, the next time you own some stock and then you happen to stop selling the strikes and the covered calls for more or less than you actually own it for, and you start selling it for more, then you could achieve a realized gain. So that would actually move this loss and like negate it and then bring it up, because this thing is tracking an overall position total. It's not going like, oh, you lost this month, well, you permanently have lost for that month and you're never going to ever be able to recover it, and then like show a positive further down the road. It actually just, for the realized gains and losses, it totals it up aggregate over time. So it'll keep moving that up. So this 4,000 may end up getting negated, which will zero this out because it gets processed overnight to calculate that. It's a little confusing, but that's why I separated it out. So if you don't care to know what the heck that thing is doing, just keep it unchecked and you're golden in that regard. But the gist of it is, if you like, say on this month, I was like, well, shoot, I took a $4,200 realized loss because I sold, a particular ticker for a lot less than I bought it for, because I was trying to collect the most premiums on the covered call. So you did the age-old thing. The age-old issue with selling covered calls is you sold it for below your cost basis, and it bit you, which it's notorious for doing, which is why I don't recommend selling covered calls for less than your cost basis, because then you'll never risk that. If you don't do that, if you keep on selling covered calls for over your cost basis, you'll never ever have to deal with this as an issue. But anyway, back to the point. So say you sold the covered call for less than your cost basis, and it bit you, it called you out on it, you took the loss, and it's showing up here, you're working your June month, and you see that, and it's like, well, I'm still shooting for a specific target of how much I'm making on my money, per week and per month, and I don't want it to calculate into that. But I do want to see, just how badly it did, bite me. So you'll notice this is 0.44 right now, and it has this huge realized loss. Well, to make things even worse, you can include that and see how it drops down to negative 5.34. So truth be told, it's actually the more accurate number to include that in this. That is really what happened. But if you're going to continue playing on that same ticker, selling cash secured puts, selling covered calls, and you change your strategy to never sell a covered call again against a position less than your cost basis, then, you can actually over time fix this problem. Because, so I think this happened on BITO, the ticker symbol BITO. If I started selling more cash secured puts on BITO and covered calls on BITO, the cool thing about it is this application tracks your cost basis even with these losses. So the cost basis that it is showing you will actually get you back into the green. It doesn't just say that was a loss and then refresh and start over at 0 after that. It continually tracks that ticker for the life of however long you trade it over the course of years. It always just gives you the total cost basis for your position in that ticker forever, for all time. So you could eventually start selling it for more than you're into it, and this number will zero out and bring up whatever the gain is up to the current month. Because anyway, that's why I have this toggle, because that number can fluctuate and change, month to month if you stay playing in that ticker. Now, if you don't trade in that ticker anymore, like I haven't been trading in BITO, that number is fixed and it's going to be permanent there, unless if I ever trade in that ticker again. Okay, I've rambled on that topic for long enough. I need to move on. All right. Down in the details of the grid, obviously just this showing the month, year. Deposits, this is showing your total deposits for the month. So if you're depositing into your brokerage account on a regular basis, like $50 a week, $100 a week, whatever a week, or even just one-time deposits, this is showing you the sum total for each month that you have deposited into the account. Also, if you are withdrawing money, like if you're living off your premiums or you're paying for one-time expenses or just taking cash out or whatever, any kind of withdrawal from the brokerage is showing up here. That's where this is showing up. Whenever you're selling cash secured puts or selling covered calls or running, credit premium strategies, this will show you the total premiums that you've collected for each month. Whenever you receive a dividend, you're tracking the total dividends that you receive each month here. The realized gain losses, that's if you actually got called out on a stock and a stock transaction happened where you had bought and sold and you realized a gain or loss. It'll show up here and it'll show up in whichever month that happened in. All right, the net working capital. A lot of times you'll notice that this number will not match your liquid net capital that you have, like in Thinkorswim or something like that. The reason why is because Thinkorswim obviously shows you the real time at that point in time. If you were to just sell and liquidate everything you had in the brokerage, that's close to the number that you would come out with. So this number is not taking into account your unrealized losses. So it's taking the total value that you bought the stock at, and it doesn't care how much you've lost unrealized on that. So this 82,000 is the total capital that I have involved plus all the premiums that I've made up until that point. And the reason why is that gives me it gives me an indicator of how much value I have in the brokerage account because I'm using that to target a certain percentage that I want to make a week. I work weekly, so I target 1% a week. And this is the number it's using to figure out if I've attained that or not. So as you can see, for the month of December 2025, I have $3,088 that I've collected in premiums, but also $476 in dividends I've collected. The dividends and the premiums are both accounted for or taken into consideration when it's figuring out this percentage. So, and it's figuring out the percentage based off the net working capital. So this amount right here is 4.4% of the net working capital. Now, if you actually ran the calculation to see if this number is, options plus the dividends divided by the net working capital, is that it is not. The reason why is because it actually uses an average working capital. It takes the previous month plus this month divided by 2 to actually come up with the percentage. And reason why is because as these numbers go up, this number goes up. So it's better just to take the average working capital of how much you're making on just the average between this and the last month. It's just a smoothing effect to try and smooth it out a little bit more. Anyway, that's why that number will not match exactly. Okay, moving on to the next column, NWC change. This is the net working capital change. Easy enough. It's just the difference between the current month and the previous month. We have gone up a total of $4,935 since the last month. Or in this case, we went down $3,800 from this month to that month. Or sorry, this month to that month, we went down $3,800. The performance, I just covered what that is, and then the annualized is just the 4.4 annualized. So there, that covers all of the columns. When you switch over to daily, you'll notice like a bunch of these columns disappear, and I think it's just dropping some of the columns, but keeping the rest. So the calculations are still the same, just on a smaller time period. Yeah, see how it just shows the daily average performance, because obviously the monthly, you wouldn't have a daily there, you just have the monthly average performance. So this is the daily, and this is the annualized overall based off of that daily. All right, so coming back to all months. Yeah, so there you go. That's the dashboard performance tab. And so how I use this is like, so let me just come back up to 2026. This is real time. So far we're in, I guess, what, the first full week, second full week. So we're starting the third full week, except for today's a holiday, so the market's closed. But in any case, so what I use to target this is I try and target 1% a week. So obviously we're starting the third week, so I'm just a little behind. I've already done the first percent for the first week. I only did 0.8 theoretically for the second week. So starting this third week, I would be looking to get this number up to closer to 3, or, obviously over 3 would be better. But this is how I do that. So I'll be selling my positions, cash secured puts, selling covered calls on position, and I'll usually put enough capital into positions or roll whatever I can to achieve that 1% a week, and then I'll just stop because I like having the capital available in case I need to, put some more money into it, because the stock prices are always fluctuating up and down. I might be able to get into it at a better position because I usually always sell at the money. The cash secured puts are always at the money, but the covered calls obviously depend on the cost basis that I'm into position to determine what I sell those for. But that's how I use this. I'll see if I've attained the 1% for the week, and if I have, then I'm good to go, and I just stop and I just monitor my current positions and roll as necessary. But as far as putting new capital into a position, I go by this percentage to determine whether or not I do that or not. And also something cool to see is just the all time. So you can see all time, it's totaled up by the year, and you can see how you've done for each year. So not too bad. In any case, that is the performance tab on the dashboard. I wanted to just give a video to cover that and show what it does. Talk to you guys next time.
I want to thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and go out today to MyATMM.com and get your free account so you can start tracking your own transactions. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.